What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you part 2 of my Ultimate Challenge series, where I had previously ran through the game officially for the Ultimate Challenge, as it were. And in this series, I am taking all of that footage, which was uncommented and unedited as a default, and boiling that down into exactly what I was doing and why, and explaining the challenge in full so other people might complete it for themselves. Now, previously, in part 1, it covered getting started, character creation, all that stuff, as you might imagine, and in particular, it was about the first couple hours of the run. Now, in this next section, Neketaka, we're covering everything we're doing in Neketaka, the big main city of the game. And this is where we are going to spend a substantial amount of time, probably at least like 3 or 4 hours. By the time we're done in Neketaka, my playtime was sitting at around 7 and some change. But with no further ado, let's actually dive into it and get into the specifics of what we will be doing here. Now, picking up right where we left off on the docks of Neketaka, first things we're going to do is loot everything as usual. Everywhere we go, we're going to try to loot everything we can. This is going to give us food and everything else we're going to sell, because by the time we leave Neketaka, we'll be buying a ship with all of our ill-gotten gains. Now, the first thing we're going to do is go north of the dock and talk to the dock master, which is Zaymar. He's having a problem with pirates, or more specifically, the Principe, and we can step in to deal with it. Doing this quest actually gives you a discount on the ships you can buy and everything. But right now we're just picking up that quest. Then we're going to loot everything just kind of in and around, and this is actually a pretty good time to sort out your food and water, because if you'll remember, one of the challenges causes our goods to spoil as we move through the game, meaning that we have to actively swap them out with fresh food and drinks for our crewmates on our ship, and this includes time while you're in town. We're going to spend a lot of time in Neketaka, and that timer is still ticking, which means you need to keep an eye on their food and everything. From there, though, we can make our way down to the large inn in this area called the Wild Mare. Basically, we're just going to steal everything and talk to everybody. In particular, though, we can also talk to a specific woman for the quest Zamar just gave us. In particular, Captain Radora. She'll give us information about who we need to look for, which is Kata, at least I think that's his name, and he'll show up in an alley at night later on. After that, go upstairs, talk to everybody else. You can also talk to Constantine, who would normally be a sidekick you could take on with you, but here, obviously, we're playing solo because of the challenge, and so he won't actually be joining us. Right after we do that, we can step around the corner to an empty house here where we can disarm a trap and loot some chests. The trap will actually give you XP, by the way, that's important. And then loot everything down on the docks before making our way up to the other empty home over near the docks, which is the same thing, just traps and things to loot. And Kata, the guy we're looking for, will actually be up in this corner over here, so you can do a quick check to see if he's here, but you can also talk to the child around the street magician performing to get some more information. But basically, we need to show up when he's here in order to actually deal with him. Now, after that, we're going to talk to Nira Bardato to clear, or at least start rather, the beginning quest of a trade dispute that is happening here in this particular corner of Neketaka. We're going to settle that dispute peacefully by choosing some specific options in certain encounters, which is going to help us out in the long term, both for experience, but also items and stuff. Now, we're going to go up and around from where Nira was to find the sort of waterfall cave area where the members of 2 families are fighting. Nira just sent us to find one of them. Now, our goal in this conversation is to make sure nobody dies, and we're going to pick the options basically saying, how about instead of dueling to the death, we duel to the first blood? And that will bring us to a text event where we're basically going to follow through on that, just watching them fight and making sure they don't kill each other, and then we're pretty much good to go. That will complete that initial quest, and we can make our way into the Bardato estate to talk to Nira and finish that up. And then from there, we can go around and loot the entire estate, of course, but also talking to Izali Bardato, the sort of matriarch of the family, and she's going to give us a few more tasks for this family, and we can kind of get back and forth on the good side of both families by doing all of these quests. So she's going to give us another job to do, which we'll be doing shortly, but, mostly loot everything at the moment. And around there should put us at level 8. Just like before, we can put it into mechanics and diplomacy, though I am going to take this specific mention to jump ahead just a little bit. If you watched part 1, you'll remember that I missed picking up a buff over in Dunnage while we were there. That's my bad, but this is probably the point to mention that it's going to cause us some slight issues, and you're going to actually see me respec during this because I have to get at least 1 point in athletics to get it up to 3 with our other buffs in order to pass a check later. Otherwise, though, mechanics and diplomacy, just like every other level up to this point. And then for our ability, we can pick up deleterious alacrity of motion as well as the quarterstaff proficiency. Now from there, we're going to go enter the Valera estate, the other family involved in this feud, and we're going to loot everything in their house as well, mind you, as well as undo any traps we see, if only for the XP. Do keep in mind not to get caught stealing in here though, as with basically everywhere else too, mind you. But after that's done, we're going to go upstairs and talk to the head of this family, looting as we go, and this is Atello Valera. He's basically just going to do the same thing, but we're going to do some quests for him to get on his good side as well before we ultimately try to sit these two family members down. He's going to give us a quest to go clear out some people causing some problems at the inn, the Wild Mare that we were just at. So from there, we're actually going to come down here to the sort of bottom of the area, past the Valian Trading Company's headquarters, and talk to a member of one of the families we were just speaking to. You can also go ahead and pick up some tools at the cobbler we're going to pass by on the way there, but otherwise, Zilly Valera is going to give us a solution to that quest we just got to clear out those guys from the Bannered Mare. And he's also going to give us some tips about where to find Persa, an individual we are looking for in relation to the other quest we got from that family. Now, we can from there go to the sort of balcony of the Wild Mare, talk to Shrimp there, who we can send to go listen to the music of Zilly Valera, which will clear them out, finishing that quest, and then we can return and get that one in, which we can go ahead and do right now. After we're done with that, we're going to leave that estate and we're going to take the east exit out of Queen's Berth, which is the area of Neketaka we're in. We're going to travel to a place called the Gullet. Now we're going to go basically finish off the other quests we got for that family real quick. Now we do want to explore and steal everything we can from the Gullet as well. You can also talk to this beggar here to give you some more information about everything going on in the Gullet, which is handy to have but not super necessary. But we're going to cut straight across the Gullet and come to the other sort of inn in this area, which is less than reputable, stealing everything along the way, including the gold hidden behind the perception check right before you get to the sort of inn area. But what we're looking for is actually behind the bar. We're going to sneak our way into this area where we can find Persa, the member of that family we were looking for, having a conversation. And we can find out that Persa here is planning a heist with the Valera family on the Azali family vault. Now, as we leave the inn, or the bar if you prefer, we are going to be accosted by some ne'er-do-wells in this part of town, and it is possible to peacefully resolve this situation by simply paying them like 50 gold, which is practically nothing. So I like to do it that way. Now from there, we're going to go right back to Queen's Berth and turn that quest in for Azali Bardato, which we just had. Now, we can inform Azali about this particular plot, and we're going to get some rewards for having done that, including some parts for our ship, but don't worry about that too much right this second. Now, from here, we're actually going to suggest these two families come to a discussion to sort of hash out their agreements. We're going to bring that discussion both to Atello as well as Azali. Surprisingly, they're going to agree to doing just that, and during this sit-down, it's very, very important that we pick some specific conversation options. First, we're going to open by defining their grievances. Then we're going to put the please let's try not to sabotage this one. And then for this third conversation option, we're going to pick duty should come first and vendetta a distant second. That's really important. Now, after this, we're going to pick the second option, Azali, why shut the Valera family out of trade. After that, we're going to pick the first option. It's not like you've given them a reason to prove their trustworthiness, at which point you'll have pretty well sorted all this out. They will come to an agreement, you'll get a reward from both of them, and we'll have done that without having any fights at all. What's more, though, it is possible for that to go sideways if you did something wrong or if anybody died, at which point that situation turns into an ambush. So it's very important you pick those specific options. Now, once you're done getting your rewards, we can make our way down to the Valian Trading Company. Now, we're going to speak to Tawinu outside, who's going to give us a pretty easy quest to go inside and negotiate for him, trying to get his contracts back from the shady business guy in here, but we're going to steal everything in the trading company headquarters. And we're also going to make a point to talk to Lueva Alvari and get her quest that we're not actually going to do, called the Storms of Poco Kahara, but talk to everybody, loot everything's the gist of it. But in the bottom left room here, we can steal some stuff and then talk to Luca here. Now we can use our diplomacy to pass a check called there must be some agreeable way to sort out the problem between him and Tawinu, and if we have the diplomacy to do that, we can sort of talk our way through this, especially with keep negotiating like this, and you'll drive the Huana into the arms of the RDC, followed by the company losing loses nothing by letting go of an island that was never theirs, then you can resolve that peacefully as well, giving us some more XP and everything. Now, while we're here, we may as well go upstairs, loot everything up here as well, though there's not a terribly large amount, before we go turn that quest back in outside, and ideally we're going to want to accept the reward there. But after this, we can make our way over to Sansa's Map Emporium, try to steal everything we can find in there, though it's a little tricky with Sansa in there. If you have the stealth skills for it, you can actually do it, but it's a little difficult. We're not going to be doing any of Sansa's quests, though. From there, we're going to head over to the Adra warehouse, where we're going to, again, steal everything that isn't nailed down, but we're also going to steal some very, very important items. But first, this is probably about where you're going to level up again. Now, this is where, if we have 8 mechanics, that'll do us for right now, and you'll actually start putting points into stealth instead, but otherwise keep going with diplomacy. For skills, I just pick up Warding Seal. We're going to wind up respecing here in a minute anyway. But we want the extra stealth, really, because we're about to steal from all of these crates in this warehouse, because they have an item we're going to need for a quest later. Those crates of Adra. You want to make sure you try to get all of it so we don't have to come back here later to do it again. But that refined luminous Adra here, we're going to turn that in for a quest later and save ourselves some headache. But, if you don't do it right now, you'll just have to come back and get it later. Now, from here, we basically just have to deal with Kata and his wolf, though do keep in mind he only shows up in the evening, which means you're going to have to wait in order to make that happen. Try not to waste too much time doing it this way, but it is certainly possible. Worst case scenario, you can just wait like an hour. But once it's evening time, we can go speak to Kata and his wolf, and the thing is, we're actually going to take his side against the shipwright, because he's working with the Principe, and doing so is frankly expedient for us. We basically just agree to help him shake the shipwright down, and then we go to the shipwright and say that basically he's got no choice but to accept this deal, and we're going to get a discount on his goods either way. And while not exactly happy, we'll have successfully resolved that quest as well, which is as good a time as any to sell stuff you're not using to Zamar himself here, because we should have enough money if we've been picking up everything and, selling it just now and then completing all these quests to go ahead and buy a ship while we're here called the Voyager. The Voyager is the fastest ship in the game. It can outrun basically everything else. Now remember, when you do this, you have to switch your primary ship over to the Voyager, and you're going to need to reset your crew and everything. Now it's also important to outfit it the best you can, but it's not terribly important right this second. We're going to be upgrading our sails and everything a little bit later. But this is mainly going to be important for when we leave Neketaka, because we want the fastest sailing speed possible, because remember, time is ticking down, and thanks to the Aethys God challenge, we are up against a timer. Though it's pretty liberal, so don't freak out about it too much. Now from here, we're finally going to leave Queen's Berth and make for Periki's Overlook, or Periki maybe? I'm not entirely sure, but once we are in this area, the first thing we're going to do is stop by this exotic herb shop and check the vendor here. Now this part is a little tricky because we need a specific item from this vendor. It's a tusk actually, but if you don't know how vendors work in PoE 1 and 2, I believe, is that they have a set stock and then they have a portion of their stock that refreshes every 12 to 24 in-game hours. That's important because what we need is basically all part of the refreshable stock here. We need that tusk, and we also need Rahi pods, primal rocks, which is all I could personally find. Again, you want that tusk if you can get it. It's really important we find at least one. You're going to have a few opportunities to stop by this shop. Now, it's not the end of the run if you don't get it, and I personally got really bad RNG and never got it, but it's important to buy stuff like that, and I think it's a reptile blood and an ear item, which we'll go over later, in order to enchant some stuff. But the tusk, again, the most important thing. Grab it if you see it. Other than that, we're going to move through Periki's Overlook, stealing everything as we go. But right in front of the big mage tower, we can encounter 2 characters having an argument about the Harapo Epic, which is an artifact that the mage Arkemyr is holding in his tower here in the Overlook, and we are basically being tasked with stealing from the Archmage's vault in order to make that happen. Now, just north of that, we can pick up an imp who can join our sailing crew, which I would suggest you get just because it's hilarious, and then from there we can continue stealing everything in the Overlook here. Though compared to the Queen's Berth, it's a relatively small area. Now, once we've made our rounds around there, this is typically where you're going to enter Arkemyr's Dark Cupboard. This is basically the shop of the mage next door. When we enter, we're going to see someone steal a pair of gloves from his sort of situationship, who is the Archmage's apprentice. This is another potential sidekick with a quest to do in order to make that happen, and we're going to wind up doing that quest, mind you. So take her up on her offer there. While we're here, we may as well shop for some of the other things I just went over, but also some thieves' putty as she sells it, which is a good place to get it. And we can ask some questions about getting inside Arkemyr's manor as well. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about stealing anything from the shop at this particular moment, because what we're going to do is go upstairs, steal from the bedroom here, and then we're going to interact with the window. Now, if you didn't miss that buff like I did in Dunnage, what you'll be able to do is throw a grappling hook over across to the mage's tower and start the heist that way. This is actually the moment where I realized I forgot that buff in Dunnage and had to respec. So we'll be doing that here in just a moment. And by the way, you may as well unlock Arkemyr's door as well, just because you can, unlock it and get a little bit of experience. Because we have to skip that and come back later, I went ahead and moved on to Serpent's Crown. Serpent's Crown is the main area of Neketaka. There's a few things for us to do here. For starters, we can go to Takano's estate. Now, we're going to loot basically everything here, just like everywhere else, but there's actually one item here that's very important for us to get. It's a quest item in a locked chest. So we're going to go upstairs, steal the key, and then come back downstairs and unlock the chest back here with Takano's key. There's a quest item in that chest that we need later. Then we're going to run alongside the left portion and enter Muhai's estate, which is a woman who's actually died because nobody's checked on her, and we can pick up a quest to take her remains to another part of the city and have them cremated. Don't forget to talk to her like I did on your way out the door, by the way, otherwise you'll have to come back. It's easy to forget. But basically, we're going to cremate her remains for a quick quest completion. Now, the manor on the far left side, you may as well unlock it to get the XP, but don't actually go in there. It's for a bounty thing. There's nothing for us in there. And then we can make our way into the Kahanga Palace. This is where we will meet with the Queen of Neketaka, the Queen of the Hawana people in particular. Now, this is our main quest objective. We have to come talk to her, Queen Onikaza. And doing so will actually give us a little more time on our next main quest objective, which all of them are required to be completed by a certain date in game, and that date doesn't change, but we have so many days to come talk to Queen Onikaza before that gets extended out a little bit further. So we are going to do that at some point. And then her brother, Prince Aruihi, I think it is going to give us the next quest for the Hawana, which is to investigate some stuff going on in the Gullet, which we're going to do later. After that, as always, go ahead and steal everything in the Kahanga Palace that we can get our grubby little mitts on, before coming upstairs to the very top and talking to the Queen again, where we can get a little more information, but mostly just so we can steal some more stuff. Now, once we're done with that, we can take the east exit over to the Gullet. Now, coming in from this direction, we're going to see a cutscene play out where a lower caste citizen gets tossed into the depths of the city, basically to die, which gives us some information on the Hawana as a people. And what we're going to do is help that man's family out in order to deal with some quick quest completions for XP, of course. Now that we're actually in the Gullet proper without just trying to do a quest real quick, we're going to steal everything. But also we need to go talk to Biha, that woman that just ran away, and we're going to see about arranging a passage out of the city for her and her, I think, like 6 kids. And we're going to do that by handling some stuff in the inn nearby. But first, steal everything. We're going to go talk to the sort of elder down here, Inoi, who's a blind guy. We're going to agree to help with the food shortage down here for the Raparu class, I believe it's called, as they are supposed to feed off the scraps from everybody up above, but it's not working because the caste system just isn't keeping up with the size of Neketaka anymore. And we're going to need that quest a little later. But from there, go to the hole, or the inn, and we're going to talk to Seduzo, I believe it is, and she's the woman arranging passage for the children and that woman. Now, she's going to explain that she just literally does not have the room for them thanks to some paladins upstairs taking up the space. Now, what we're going to do is go talk to those paladins while also stealing everything from inside this place. But basically, we're going to convince the paladins to find a different ship by explaining, via our diplomacy, that only half of the kids will actually be able to fit on the ship as it stands, and they'd have to put up with that the entire voyage, and we'll basically convince them to find another ship, thus making room for all of that family and completing that quest. But remember to unlock and steal everything while we're down here. Before we leave, talk to Seduzo again, kind of arrange for the rest of the family to actually get there, and then we can go talk to Biha real quick and finish up that particular quest, and then we'll be good to go. From there, we're going to loot the rest of this while also entering a place called Pitli's Sanctuary, where we can learn that we need to find some medicine for some sick Raparu down here. That's another quick quest we can do that's really easy to complete, called Harsh Medicine. And if you're a terrible, terrible person, you can also come in here and pickpocket all the money from these sick, dying people, because nobody said we were playing a good person this particular run. Okay, from there, on the very far left side of the Gullet, there's an exit that will take you to a sort of text event. This is what's called the Narrows. You have to make your way through this particular sort of dungeon, if you will, and it's going to take us to a few different places that we need to go. So first, we're going to go right a few times so we can speak to a guy named Dario, who works for the Principe, or the pirate faction. If we had done everything right up to this point, he should have already talked to you, basically, or sent a message for you, but we're going to enter the hideout and talk to Dario so we can further the Principe quest line, which we are going to need to do. Now, the thing is, Dario's going to ask for that quest item that we stole from Takano's Manor already, so all we've got to do is turn it into him. Now, from here, he's going to ask us to investigate a place in the very furthest reaches of Neketaka, which is the place that Raparu guy got tossed into to die just a few moments ago. Now, in order to do that, we have to navigate certain areas of the Narrows, but at any rate, this is around the time we should have hit level 10. So we're going to put a point into stealth or mechanics, and then diplomacy, of course. For buffs, this is a pretty good time to pick up Devotions of the Faithful, but for your mage class, it is essential that you pick up Essential Phantom. We're going to be using that a lot here in just a few moments. Now from here, we're going to make our way through the text event that is the Narrows until you find a market stall that you're going to step through in order to find a place called Delver's Row, which is a sort of black market in Neketaka. Now we're going to do a few things here. For starters, we're going to find the Drowner's Lung Medicine for those sick people. We're going to take care of eventually Dario's quest, because this is where we'll access, I think it's called the Undercroft, and there's a whole host of people to talk to down here and potentially buy things from as well. That said, we don't particularly need anything besides our quest objectives. So if we talk to the merchant Ernezo, we can confirm that he has the Drowner's Lung Medicine, and we can choose to pay him for it if you want to, but we can also just walk around the side and steal it for free. And you can even talk to an assassin on the right side of the map to resolve a dispute between some people over here, potentially killing a bunch of the merchants down here in order to potentially take care of a quest. But if you hit the hidden switch on the wall, you can unlock the sort of hidden door as well as steal the medicine and the secret room of Ernezo, which is effectively that particular quest solved for the dying Raparu. Now, we can go ahead and go turn that in now if you want. There's really nothing stopping you from doing that. But before I went on to do the Undercroft and everything else, I decided now was probably the right time to tackle Arkemyr's Manor before I got too far ahead of myself doing everything else. So in order to do that, I had to go ahead and respec, because as I mentioned, I missed that buff and simply did not have the whopping 3 athletics required to get across the gap to do it the right way, basically, or the way that is most advantageous to us. Now, our level ups stayed basically the same when I respec'd. The only real difference is that I put a single point into athletics this time, and then used the buffs we had acquired otherwise to boost it the rest of the way to 3, which was going to give us what we needed to cross that gap. Everything else didn't really change, though. And by the way, you can actually respec right down inside the dark cupboard, which is what I went ahead and did. Now, once that's done, we can go back upstairs in the dark cupboard and throw that grappling hook across successfully this time, and sneak our way across to the rooftop of Arkemyr's Manor. Now, it's important that you sort of immediately stealth to avoid the constructs down here. You do not want to get caught by them just yet, but here in just a moment, they'll be trivialized and unimportant. Now, we're going to take the staircase on the left side of the rooftop here, coming up to the top level, which is where we're going to enter Arkemyr's bedroom. We're going to steal everything in here because we can, including undoing some traps and looting some scrolls, that kind of thing. But we're also going to be getting a bunch of information about how to rob the place, including grabbing Arkemyr's robe. So if you've never done this quest before and you just don't know, if you equip Arkemyr's robe that we just stole from his room, the constructs will actually leave you alone. And if we read the notes we also stole up here, we can get the password for an imp that we're going to need to tell them in just a moment. But put the robes on to avoid the constructs, thus allowing us to move pretty freely throughout the manor, except for the bottom floor, which has monsters we are not going to deal with. And then we can pretty much run around as we please. From there, we're going to make our way to the second floor of the manor, talk to Yellow Eye 3, give him the password, which is cider and cheese, where we can then ask him about the crystal, which will explain some of what we need to know in order to get into the vault downstairs. Now from there, we just go through the manor, stealing absolutely everything as usual, being able to move about freely, not worried about the constructs or anything as long as we've got that robe on. But then we can make our way down to the laboratories level, or the basement, and what we're going to do here is follow the main path straight down to the vault. Do not go anywhere else. There's monsters down here. You don't want to fight them. Then we're going to interact with the thing on the wall, set the crystal in place, and enter the password that we got. This gets us into the vault, which is where we need to be to steal the Harapo Epic. There's also a bunch of traps down here. We're going to disarm all of those for the XP, of course, and what's more, one of the very important grimoires we need to utilize our spells that we're going to use is also in this vault. But obviously we're going to steal everything down here, but the Harapo Epic is what we need for the quest, and then we need that grimoire most importantly. The grimoire being Ningoth's teachings, by the way. Now once that's done, we're going to exit the vault, go to the right, continue down the main hallway, interact with the wall there, use a hammer and chisel to bring it down, which is going to bring us into the bathhouse, which is nearby in Periki's Overlook. From here we can basically just go straight up into the baths. You can also take a bath for a buff if you want, but now that we've got the Harapo Epic in hand, we can take another trip up to Serpent's Crown to turn that epic into the quest giver up here, which is the nearest by, and then that will finish up that particular quest. And then right after that, we'll get a summons from Arkemyr to do his follow-up quest, which we also need to do for another grimoire, as well as Consul Hunt, which is going to Bakarna's. Now we're going to go do that. We're going to go talk to Arkemyr, who's basically going to ask us about, the robbery that took place at his mage's tower, and he's going to basically give us this task in order to, not attack us, basically, in order to make it right. And lucky for me, while I was up here, this is where I realized I forgot to talk to Muhai before I left the first time, so I could do that as well. Otherwise, we're just going to come straight back down here to the Overlook, where we can talk to Arkemyr to get that follow-up quest, and also, while you're down here, we can talk to the woman in the exotic herb shop as well to again see if we got any of the items we needed from the shop RNG. That's a decent time to check on that as well if you didn't get the tusk the first time around. But once we've talked to Arkemyr and everything, we can go to the bathhouse and talk to Degnos outside. Might as well do this quest while we're out here, which is just retrieving something from the upstairs of the bathhouse and bringing it back to him. But if we do a little extra investigation, we can also find a few different ways to complete that quest, which we're going to try to do non-violently. Otherwise, we can steal stuff from the bathhouse if you haven't already. And then we're going to leave south from the Overlook down to Queen's Berth again, and we're going to get hit by a random event, so to speak, from sailors who are looking for what we just took from the bathhouse. We can basically just say that we're returning his satchel to him and that we'll be on our way, but they can follow if they want, which they are certainly going to do. From there, make your way to the docks of Queen's Berth, and we can turn the satchel into Degnos and Aveta and kind of explain this however which way we want. It doesn't really matter as long as we get the XP for it. But once that's done, it's as good a time as any to finally return to Delver's Row, or the sort of black market area we found ourselves in to begin with. And while we're here, we might as well sell some stuff to all these merchants, as we're no doubt carrying a bunch of stuff we don't need, and the more money we've got, the better. Now, somewhere in all that mess, we very likely leveled up to, I think it's level 11, and this is the point where I respec again to get ready for a fight that we were going to have later, which was basically to put all the points and make sure I had the abilities that we needed so I could respec from where I messed up, didn't grab those athletics that we needed. Now, probably important to mention that we do also need to pickpocket an item off of somebody later, so you might want to also get ready for that, which is a sleight of hand check, though we do have more ways of buffing that one. Otherwise, the levels themselves stay pretty much the same in terms of abilities and everything that we've covered up to this point. Now, it's important, before we go down to the Undercroft, ideally, that we have read a note on a dead guy that you could have found while exploring the text event of the Narrows. He's going to have a note on him, and if we read that note, we can kind of find out what happened to him, which is part of a quest we're going to do while we are down in the Undercroft area. Now, before we go down to the Undercroft, it's important that we stock up on spark crackers, which are an item you can craft in the crafting menu. We should have plenty of the items to do so as long as you haven't sold them or something, which there's really no reason to sell those in particular. And it's also important to make sure that you've stolen the Audra from the warehouse in Queen's Berth by now, because we're going to use all of that in the Undercroft where we're about to go, which we're going to access from Delver's Row. Now, in order to do that, we find the little wooden bridge with Darios people guarding it, and because we've got permission, we just go up and click the button before finding ourselves in the Undercroft. Now, we're going to steal, again, everything we can get our hands on, though do keep in mind that it is, in fact, stealing down here, even though we are in a sort of less lawful place of the area of Neketaka. But our main goal here is to talk to the Principe woman in charge, Captain Mad Morena. She's going to solve the food shortage for the Roparu, but in order to do that, we have to have found the guy in the Narrows with the note so that we can tell Mad Morena where he is, and then we can offer up a deal where we trade in a bunch of those crates of Adra we stole from the warehouse in exchange for her helping with the food shortage. And that will solve all of that. Now, when you're finished stealing with everything, on the other side of the Undercroft, just north of where Mad Morena is, we can talk to Gwynfin, which is the woman that Dario sent us down here to find and talk to. Gwynfin is going to sort of help us navigate, or access rather, the old city ruins. This is the portion that the quest for Dario is going to send us to. Basically, we need to find and look at a special sort of mural down here to give him information about it. But this is a stealth section. There are enemies that are going to be everywhere, and where you go is extremely important. It's very easy to get caught down here, and if you get caught right now, you're just dead. But if you know exactly where to go, it's easy enough to stealth your way through this and complete that quest in a pacifist way. So in the first area, we activate our stealth, exiting out of the ruins, avoiding the enemies, and then we make for the tunnel to the right. We're going to steal a bunch of stuff down this way that we can grab from pots and stuff, but we need to be careful not to go too far. In fact, if you wanted to watch my unedited playthrough to see exactly where I go, it's kind of recommended because we got stuff to avoid down here in terms of skulldraks and bats and whatnot. But we're going to steal some stuff down these passageways before turning around and going back to the sort of main path we were just on. Now we're going to go up the main path until we find some stairs while avoiding the enemies where we can. But at the top of the stairs, this is super important. And by the way, pretty good time to activate a Thieves' Putty if you need it. At the very top of the stairs, we're going to cut immediately right next to the wall here. Now the thing is, you do not want to cut diagonal. You want to go exactly next to this wall, because as you may see, there's a zombie laying on the ground there. And if you step on him or near him, he will activate and combat starts immediately. You have to go directly next to this wall, right up to the corner, and then immediately shoot right across the other wall. Do not cut diagonally across that space. But do it quick, because otherwise you'll get seen by the other zombie that's active. And then we can go where we need to go, which is into this cave nearby, where we can pick up Modweir, which is a talking sword, which has a really fun quest normally, which we're going to carry with us because we can soul bind it to us as a priest, and it's fun enough to carry around for funsies. And also there's a bunch of stuff we can steal over here, including some tools like a grappling hook and whatnot. Now from there, we're going to be really close to the exit, or at least the other area of the old city that we're going to click on. Now from here, we stealth across basically the bottom of the map to almost the other side of it. This is to avoid the enemies that are wandering around in the middle. Now the shades in particular are kind of a marker, but once you've snuck past the shades, you go a little bit farther until you start turning north, which is where we can steal a few things. And once you start seeing sunlight, that's where you know you're near the stairs. We're going to go up the stairs while avoiding the earth blights before cutting north, stealing a bunch of other stuff, and then finding a body that is completely surrounded by corpses. Now the second we loot this body, all these corpses are going to rise up, but we're going to quickly steal these items and then immediately run away. Now we're in stealth, so we're not going to get seen, and we should be fast enough that it won't be a big deal. And we are going to fight those guys later, just not right now. But directly left from where that body is, we'll find some more stairs that leads to a temple. This is where we need to be for the quest. Now we're going to use the items in the hands of the statue here that we stole for Dario in order to lower the wall in front of us. Now normally in this room, there's a big boss enemy, which you can kind of see here. This is one of the bosses we have to kill for the ultimate, but we are not fighting this guy right now. We're going to use Thieves' Putty and our Boots of Stealth to get around the outskirts of the room to investigate the mural to pass the quest. Now, if you hug the very outside wall, you can avoid aggroing this guy and investigate the mural. But you do have to be very precise with it, because otherwise it will start to detect you in stealth. Now, you can loot as you sort of make a circle around the room. Just make sure you're really quick and aim for the very specific corners where he cannot detect you, and then you can sort of reset your stealth meter before getting around and back out of the room. That part is a little tricky, and you may want to practice or something on another save file if you need to, but once that's done, you're pretty much free to leave, and we're going to stealth back out the way we came in. Just do keep in mind those shades are basically right at the bottom of the big stairs. Now, once that's done, you can click on any exit where it says Old City Ruins. It's all going to take you to the same place. Once we're back in the Old City Ruins, we basically just do the same thing, minus that little excursion to the right, in reverse. Remember to hug those walls and do not cut diagonally across that dead body. Then we can head down the stairs and right back to Gwynfin while avoiding enemies. Now, once we've talked to her, we can head right back to Dario in the Narrows to turn that quest in. After that, we can have more conversation with Dario if we want to, but Once that's done, we're basically just turning in all of the quests we just got. The food for the Roparu, as well as the medicine to the sick lady with the Roparu if you haven't done that yet. So basically we're going to go back to the Gullet and start turning some of that stuff in. Now once that's done, we can leave the Gullet and head for the other part of Neketaka known as the Sacred Stair. This is where we need to be for the Principe quest for Captain Ferrante that we picked up in Dunnage in the previous part. We're going to do that by going to the Temple of Berth and talking to the head priest there and also stealing a couple things. But the priest is going to eventually give us access to the bottom area by explaining what we're down there for. And that Eel's Coil, I believe it's called, is going to give us access to the tomb that we're going to explore, which is going to bring us to one of the trickier stealth sections. In fact, I would say it's probably the hardest stealth section of the entire run here in just a little bit. But we come down the stairs from the main entrance to the temple in order to access that place. But first, we're going to run around the actual Sacred Stair area first. The fire in the middle of the place is where we can throw Muhai's body into to complete that quest. You can also steal a fancy shield from nearby, though you do have to be pretty quick about it. And somewhere in there is likely when you're going to hit level 12. Now, if you haven't done it yet, you're going to need to probably respec and put all of your mechanics points into stealth right here. The reason for that being so we can get as much as possible in terms of bonuses to stealth in order to get past this next section. It is very difficult. We're going to need all the boosts we can get. So if you haven't done that now, doing it here is as good a place as any to get that done here in the Sacred Stair. But from here we can go investigate, say, the Temple of Gon or steal anything else we can find. But once we've got all of that done, we've stolen everything, we've turned that stuff in, we can go down to the Temple of Berth and put the Eel's Coil in the main door to access the Hanging Sepulchre. Now what we're going to do is sort of steal and prep the right side of this room for the stealth section. This isn't the hard part, but we're going to undo some traps and we're going to open a door on this side, but we're also going to steal everything we can, mind you. But keep in mind your mechanics is a little low, but you should still be able to disarm the traps right here, but you do have to watch out for the wandering guardsmen. Otherwise, this section is pretty easy. Now, we're going to open up the side passage here while stealthing our way through, but our goal is basically to make it to the far side of the room, disarming the traps as we go. As long as you've got 1 point in mechanics, the rest of your buffs from everything else should be more than enough to get that done. Now, we're going to hit the secret room to the side here, where we're going to hit a chain to open up another of those sort of eel doors on the far right of this initial map. Now we're going to turn around right here. We're not actually going to go through that door. We're just opening it for later. And then we're going to sneak our way back over to the exit, where we're going to step out right in front of where we just were, in front of the Temple of Berth. Now, personally, before I actually went and did this part, I took a quick trip over to the Brass Citadel. So once I got that room prepped, I went down to the Brass Citadel to get an item called Rakoa's Fingers to help me with sleight of hand to steal an item from an entity we're about to meet. So in the Brass Citadel, we can handle that quest where that guy ran away from the woman running the dark cupboard. And what we can do down here is basically resolve that quest while also getting the gloves back for that woman. Those gloves, however, are really handy in that they give us a sleight of hand bonus, so we can put those on to help us meet the goal of, I think it's 6 that you need in order to pickpocket the thing that we need. And you can also turn stuff into the prince as well, since we solved all of his problems down in the Gullet, which is what he sent us to do. I do apologize if I'm a little all over the place, as this is the part of the game where I was just kind of running all over Neketaka, so I'm trying to structure it in a way that makes sense, but if this gets a little confusing, I apologize. Now, once that's done, he's going to give us a quest called the Last Sanctuary that we're not really going to do, but once we've got all that sorted out, we can head back to the Sacred Stair to do what we need to do up here. But before we actually do this next part, which is the hard stealth part, remember to have a bunch of spark crackers with you, which are those throwable items we can craft to distract people in stealth, alongside as much stealth as we can get. Respec if you need to. We already bought the ship, which was the expensive thing. But from there, we click on the hanging tree in front of the Temple of Berth. We use a rope and a grappling hook and a little bit of athletics. Try to avoid getting down here without taking an injury, but otherwise we can investigate the tomb before we head down into the Hanging Sepulchre. Taking the tree down is going to put us on the left side of that map we were on just a little bit ago. Now what we're going to do is cut straight right across the bridge, open the metal door, which was preventing us from coming over here earlier, and then we're going to stealth if you haven't already, because then we got to sneak past all of these skeletons down to the room room below. Now in this mausoleum, we can go around and steal a bunch of stuff, but also disarm these traps and get the secret item to the right of the main coffin. That item to the right is the effigy's husk, which is going to be useful later. But once we've robbed the coffin, just immediately kind of get out of the door, or at least away from the coffin, because a monster will spawn up as you do that, but if you move immediately, you'll have enough time to get away from it. After that, we can go ahead and put on our effigy's husk robe if you want, but otherwise we're going to sneak back across all of these skeletons to the other side of the room and cross that bridge we've been around. Now from here, we're going to disarm the traps and loot everything as we go, but we're going to come up and around the side to the tricky stealth section. So it starts off simple enough by coming down this little hallway before waiting for the sort of patrol to pass by, and coming up and around the corner, disarming that trap before arriving at the tricky part. Now this is very, very specific. So you want to bring your character and stop just before the door frame of this room on your right. There's going to be an enemy in front of you, and there's a bunch of enemies that you can't see to your right. This is where we're going to make use of our spark crackers. And I like to unequip my grimoire so I don't accidentally quick it, but this is also where you need to use Thieves' Putty if you haven't already. We need like maximum stealth. Now, believe it or not, we actually want to use that Thieves' Putty right there next to the door. Us using it is going to make some noise and distract all the enemies to come and see what it was. We're going to stand at the door frame we just passed to get over to this hallway until everybody goes back where they were. Once that's done, we're going to throw spark crackers on the other end of the hallway, just out of the range of the main enemy standing in the hallway. Then everybody's going to come out and investigate that, and we're going to use that opportunity to sneak into that room, steal from the coffin, and then immediately come down into the bottom right corner. If we do this right, nobody should be in range of our stealth, and we'll be able to stay stealth while they investigate. Then we're going to hang out there for a second until we can throw a spark cracker on the other side of the room we're in. This is going to get everybody to go up there, but then we're just going to stay put, and we're going to wait a moment for all of that to sort of resolve itself. You don't want to use too many spark crackers at once, or hit an enemy with them, because then they'll be alerted to your presence. But once everybody's kind of off alert and back to their main positions, we throw another one over to that corner of the room, which is our opportunity to go back out of that door as quickly as you can, throw another spark cracker on the far side of the hallway opposite you before sneaking down and around and out of that door we opened on the right side. That part takes a lot of practice. That is a very tricky and difficult stealth section. But once we've done that and robbed both of those coffins on both sides of that room, we'll have the items we need to get into the main mausoleum part. Now we can sneak back across to the main entrance to this room via the door that we opened up earlier. But what's more, now that we've opened that steel door on the other side, we can sneak right back to where we just were. Now doing that is going to allow us to use those items on the skeleton guards guarding the main tomb area. This is going to bring us to the death guard who is down here. We have to be careful with our words. We don't want to fight this guy. Start with, disturbance. Then you talk about the ghost ship that's been sailing around. This is what we're down here for after all. And you'll find out that this guy and the woman sort of running the ghost ship absolutely hated each other. So if we bring that up, we'll have a chance to talk to him about all of this stuff. Now the thing is, we also need his sword. Or a sword that he has, I should say. So we're going to come up to the corner of the room after we loot the main thing we need for the quest down here for the Temple of Berth, which is in this guy's coffin. But from there, we're going to stealth, and then we're going to actually pickpocket Arkemyr here. And what this is going to allow us to do is steal his sword. That sword is what we're going to need later to get the ghost ship that we're going to use for reasons. And we need enough sleight of hand to actually grab it. I want to say it's 6 sleight of hand, but I honestly don't remember for sure. After that, we're going to stealth our way all the way back out to the Sacred Stair, which is where we want to be. And then we're going to, of course, turn this quest in that we just had to the sort of priest guy up here, which is where we can then finally enter the Spire of the Soul and make our way up to the top of it, where we're going to do the next part of this, which is our first, I would say, major combat encounter that we're about to have. And it's normally where you'd pick up Edwin, which is another one of the sidekicks you could potentially get. Now from here, we're going to talk to Flan at one point, but only after we first put Ningoth's teachings into our main grimoire slot and our weathered grimoire into our quick items to sort of get everything ready here. And once we're ready, we're going to talk to Flane in order to get transported via this Adra pillar to sort of place in the Beyond, which is a dangerous place, and we're going to have to be very careful in how we do this. We enter on the far side here. We're going to stealth our way across this circular area with the big sort of glowy orb, and once we do that, there's something that's going to spawn behind us. We're going to ignore that for the moment and quickly walk, because that thing's moving fast, we're going to quickly walk down the ramp where we're going to see a little cutscene. We're going to see a few people die here, destroyed by the Beyond that the Animancer that sent us here had sent previously, before we see some more enemies pop up. Now, this next part is a little tricky, so what we're going to do is use our Essential Phantom spell that we picked up earlier. This is going to start combat with the sort of main enemy that's circling the circular area with the big globe. Now, we're going to do that close enough to that entity that Vela, who's following us, is going to get scared. Once she enters that terrified state, she's locked in right here at the top. And then we're going to use these Essential Phantoms to keep kind of killing this enemy until it's gone. Now, you got to be real careful with Vela right here. Cast Withdraw on her if you need to. But we're going to basically use Essential Phantom to kill that little sort of blight enemy until Vela here is perfectly safe in her terrified state right at the top of this area, which is right where we need her to be. Once that's done, we can work our way down a little bit. Now, it's important to mention that the reason Vela's going to stay there is that we started combat with that guy at the bottom of the stairs. So this entity that we saw the cutscene with, he's in combat with us because of how that worked. That's why Vela's not getting up and, combat's dropping or anything like that, because combat has started. Now, before we kill this next guy, we have to walk stealth really down the stairs past him to put another Essential Phantom in the main room to start combat with the enemies down at the very bottom section. This is so that when we kill this enemy in the middle of the stairs, that combat doesn't drop. Thanks to Barath's combat challenge, combat does not end until we have defeated all enemies. Normally, if you're just out of the way, combat would stop, but because of that particular challenge, this works the way it does. So once we've got combat properly started, we can come back up the stairs here and kill this middle guy with our Essential Phantoms. Now, if you're wondering how we're casting that so many times, that's because we can use our blood sacrifice as a blood mage in order to sort of regen those resources and keep casting Essential Phantom. And then our health ticks up slowly back over time just in lieu of being a blood mage. That's how their passive works. But once that middle one's destroyed, we can, of course, attack those others as well. And then we can come over here to reveal the Soul Collector, which is the big mean enemy that we're slowly going to whittle down with our Essential Phantoms. Now, a way you can make this a little bit faster is that Effigy's Husk item that we picked up in the tomb just a little bit ago can be enchanted with an ability that causes damage when the wearer dies. Now, because our Essential Phantoms are effectively just copies of our character, it is possible to actually get them to sort of cause damage when they die by enchanting the Effigy's Husk with it if you have the materials to do that, which you can get by checking the shops. That will actually make this whole process a little bit faster, but it is not explicitly required. Now, our goal here is basically to just keep restoring our resources and casting Essential Phantom until all the blights around the Soul Collector are dead. Vela's at the top of the stairs safe, so we're good to go, but this can take a minute. Once all, and I mean all, of the blights around the Soul Collector are dead, we can start sort of whittling this guy down. Now, we're going to use our Essential Phantoms, but then we can cast things like Oil as well as our Ray of Flames to start actually dealing some extra damage to the Soul Collector. But he walks very, very slowly, so when he inevitably kills our Essential Phantoms, what we can do is run all the way to the left side of the map, and he'll have to walk so far that eventually combat will drop for him. We will still be in combat, but he will go back to where he was, and you can sort of follow his purple light around the map to kind of get a feel for where he is. This takes a little bit of practice, but basically our goal is to whittle him down with Essential Phantom, our Oil Slick ability, as well as Flaming Ray and whatnot in order to slowly kill this guy while restoring our abilities with our Blood Sacrifice, so we can keep casting this stuff over and over until the Soul Collector is eventually dead. Like, legitimately, this will probably take you like 40 minutes. But once he's finally dead, we can come down here to the statue and have a conversation with Rimmergand, one of the gods. Do not piss him off or he'll kill you in dialogue here, which would obviously be a game over, but eventually he'll send you back as long as you're polite enough to him. after we've looted everything we can, of course. That completes that quest for Flan, and then we'll be in the last little bit that we need for Neketaka. Now this is almost certainly going to bring you to level 13, which is where we're going to pick up Barring Death's Door as well as Farcasting. We're also going to get an important ability called Shadowing Beyond by being a Priest of Skane. That's an integral ability, you might want to learn how it works. But basically it's a stealth ability. Now that that's done, we can make our way back to the Brass Citadel, this time to steal everything that isn't nailed down, while at the same time talking to the Royal Deadfire Company, getting XP and all of their information before we inevitably leave, but our main goal is basically just to steal everything. But once we've talked to everybody in the Royal Deadfire Company, we're going to make our way back to Queen's Berth, and this is where we're going to head to the Bardado estate again, but this time to use our sleight of hand, which hopefully we haven't changed yet, in order to pickpocket Izali Bardado. She has a really good helmet that we're going to need. It's called Deltro's Cage Helm. You need, I think, like a 7 sleight of hand to pick that, so you might have to, respec or something if you need to, but you do need that helmet before you leave. This is also your last chance to stop by the herb shop, try to find that tusk, which again is integral to this, and we can also eventually turn those gloves we stole back into the Woman at the Dark Cupboard to complete that quest as well. At that point, an imp will take over and sell all the same stuff. This is also a good point to actually steal everything in the shop while we're maxed out on our stealth and everything from earlier, and that's important because there's actually a grimoire we want in the shop as well, so we'll get that while we're stealing everything in the dark cupboard. But again, this is a pretty sketchy area as far as stealing everything goes, so it's best to have a lot of stealth when you do this, which is why we waited. If you have the time for it, you can also go around trying to steal from all the shops in the Overlook as well. Some of them can be a little tricky, but not super important you do that. But at this point, we should have basically everything we needed from Neketaka. Now, chances are you've done some amount of respecking along the way to either switch your stealth out for mechanics or one way or the other. So before we leave, we are going to respec back into what we need to actually be on before we start going, which is mostly stealth and diplomacy. We can always steal some more stuff later, but again, all the abilities and stuff that we're picking up along the way with all these respecs remain the same, so those don't really change, which is why I've mentioned them as we've gone. So you just pick the same ones up every time you respec. But before you leave Neketaka, make sure that you're specced into stealth and diplomacy in particular, as we are still going to need those. Now, once you've got 9 diplomacy, though, you can actually go ahead and start rolling those diplomacy points into survival instead. As with our buffs and everything, we should pretty much be good to go there. But once we've wrapped all that stuff up and we've gotten that helm from Izali Bardado and we've got our respecs and stuff sorted out, it's finally about time to leave. But remember, this is kind of your last main chance, not your literal last chance, but pretty close to it to try to get that tusk. So if you can get it early, the better. But once all of that's sorted, we can finally leave the city by sea. And once you're on your ship ready to go, make sure that from where you switched over to the Voyager, that all of your crew members are set up in the right spot where you need them to be, and that you've sorted out your food and water, because we are about to sail to Hasongo. But for this particular part of the adventure, covering our first round through Neketaka and our main route through it, basically, is pretty much going to wrap it up for this particular segment of the Ultimate run. So I hope you enjoyed all of that. As you can see, a lot of Neketaka is running around and doing things in a particular order while also trying to continue to prep until we hit level 16, which is when we can actually start fighting things. But in the next part, we're going to sail to Hasongo, followed up by some more combat, actually, and also completing a couple quests for the Principe before ultimately coming back to Neketaka to get started killing bosses. But for right now, that'll do it for part 2. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.